Hello, and welcome to the College of Creation. My name is Dan.
And my name is Michael.
And we are Dungeons & Dragons DMs who love to homebrew items, spells, creatures, and features for D&D. And this is a show where most of the time, every week, we create new homebrew based on prompts that we get from our listeners and our community. But this week, we're doing something we've done before. We are rehashing some of our old creations to create Compendium number 2.
Yep.
Yeah, it's very exciting. We ended up creating for that a bunch of druid spells, rogue subclass,
Pokemon stat
blocks,
monsters that move things around the battlefield, and alternatives for spell scrolls.
A lot of good classic creations coming in there. And I don't know about you, Michael, but I felt like I had to do a little bit less work this time around to get everything feeling good. I mostly went back to all of my creations and thought, I still mostly like this.
That's good. I went in and did some major overhauls to specific parts. I don't know that there was a full creation that I changed, though. There were big shifts within some parts of them. But I do agree, mostly, that it was a lot less changing than it was last time.
Yeah.
Which I think speaks to our improvement as homebrewers. And as you've said before, just getting to know each other and getting to know our process, getting to know each other's processes.
Yeah.
They kind of, it builds the muscle, right? It strengthens the creative and logistical muscle that is required for homebrew.
Yeah, definitely. It wasn't all perfect, of course, but I do think that like the creations I was looking at felt a lot more like they just felt more complete. I think we've gotten better at doing those revisions earlier, taking our time maybe a little bit more with the creations sort of thinking through them with more, I guess, of a clear mindset of wanting to bring something that's presentable and that feels good. When we've always, especially more recently, I think we've brought stuff that's like not all the way there, but the concept is really good.
For sure.
And we've used this show as an avenue to kind of give and receive that feedback that's a little more targeted, I think, and a little more like, we're wanting to focus in on what do we think that would be a good way to finish this out.
Yeah.
Which gives much more of a clear guide for how to revise it when it comes to it. So most of that work of coming up with how you would change this has already kind of been done a little bit in the course of the show.
Yeah.
And it's just about applying those changes. So it feels a little bit like less work, and maybe that's what it is more than anything.
I agree with that 100%. I think that is definitely what is happening. For the first 10, it did feel a bit, listening back to them now, we were nervous to critique each other. Strange to say that now because it's become such a common practice. But I think, moving into a new working partnership and into a new creative project, I think both of us kind of were tiptoeing around the idea of correcting what we were seeing, even though the things that we were making were full of holes, right? Decidedly incomplete. It was a situation where we were a little bit tentative as far as constructive criticism goes. And now that's just become part of the fabric of the show, and I like that a lot.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that. So, but I am excited to see what sort of changes you have landed on this time around, and what direction you took some of these creations in. So let's just get into it, because this is going to be a beefy one, I think.
So the way this is going to work today, we're going to go episode by episode, and we'll alternate our revisions here. Dan, if you would like to go first. I did go first last week,
Sure.
So you can start us off with your spell scroll alternative
Indeed.
updates.
I created for this episode, you may recall, Blankenship's spellcasting elixirs.
Love it.
These were heavily inspired by the concepts of vigors or plasmids from Bioshock, in that they were spell elixirs that didn't contain one spell, but rather contained a set of spells around a theme. And depending on rarity, you got a certain number of spellcasting points to spend on those spells as you saw fit while this elixir was, the duration of the effects were still active. I've added a couple of things specifically based on what we talked about. One, the first thing that I added was the cantrip level of each elixir I decided to make free.
Okay.
You don't need to spend any spellcasting points for the cantrip level. I feel like it would just give something like a marshal access to a little bit of cantrip stuff. None of these cantrips are super overpowered, and they're all very thematic. And, it would kind of be, I think, a little bit disappointing to find one of these, drink it, and then end up using the 3 spellcasting points on like 2 absorb elements and a blade ward.
Right.
You would just never use the cantrip
Yeah.
that's loaded unless it's free. And so I decided to allow that to be free. And then the biggest other thing that I changed, because we talked so much about how there was this idea where it wanted to have a sinister edge, right? Because there's that sort of sinister quality to the way plasmids work in Bioshock, right? There's this kind of nasty, icky thing about...
Yeah, an addictive property.
Exactly. There's an addictive property, and it also is tied into this idea of like, perfecting the human form through like kind of nasty science stuff. This is very not pleasant. And you see, obviously, throughout that world, the negative effects of that. So I added this little caveat at the very end of everything here. If a creature consumes a number of spellcasting elixirs greater than its constitution modifier over the course of a single 24-hour period, it must make a constitution saving throw each time it casts a spellcasting elixir spell, with a DC equal to the elixir's save DC. And on a failed save, the creature gains 1 level of exhaustion.
Yep. Makes total sense.
You can just, if you're switching out a bunch of these elixirs and you're like, oh, I gotta, I had the nullify going, but now I want to drink it so that I can have commuter going, and you start to get more and more into it. So it's going to be a rare case. Most of your players probably will not end up with this, but you can seed this as something that has happened to somebody who has consumed these in the past, right? You seed this as something that's like, there is, this hint of a negative aspect to these.
Right.
Especially if your party does find a shop that is just stocked full of these and want to spend all their money on them, and then they're like, these are great. And then they get to that point where it's like,
I need all of them. I need all of the effects.
Actually, I'm not feeling so good anymore. And then I didn't really change any of the actual elixirs themselves very significantly.
I was going to say they look pretty similar, yeah.
I kept pretty much all of the spells more or less the same. I think they're all still good. I did kind of double check and run over them. But the 2024 versions of some of them have changed slightly, but not enough for me to say like it's so different that I wanted to take it out. But I have added one additional one. And that's the one at the very bottom of this sheet here. And this elixir is called Push. So you get things like Gust, Catapult, Earthbind, Levitate, Slow, Windwall, Telekinesis, and Scatter are the ones that are loaded across here. So this just has a little bit more of that like telekinetic shove and moving things around sort of energy as well. But that's more or less just to add an additional one with the sort of intention that like if more of these wanted to happen, there's plenty of spells that you could load into another one and keep homebrewing new versions of these elixirs. And I think it's great.
I like it a lot.
How about you?
I changed a little bit of the structure for mine, and I added to it. If you remember, for my spell scroll alternatives, I really painted just outside of the box of where a spell scroll alternative should lie. They were not a one-to-one alternative for spell scrolls at all. I called these the heroic tropes, and they were based solely within a character's background, which in 2014 was not very robust. So these were meant to be kind of a continuation of something that felt unfinished in the published material. Now, as we know in the 2024 rules, the background holds a lot more weight. It is a viable mechanical piece of character creation. It's where you get your ability score improvements at level 1. You get a feat. Every character gets an origin feat from their background. And that's where you get a lot of your skill proficiencies. So I took all of the level 1 features of these out. I just removed them, but I did keep the idea of, based on the background you select throughout the campaign, your DM has the option of slotting a few things in that are only available to you because you are an acolyte or because you are a sage or a soldier. So these first two here, the Acolyte and the Sage, really did not change almost at all. The Acolyte is 100% the same. All three of those options are identical. For the Sage, both Hidden Knowledge and Eldritch Neutralizer, totally the same. I did change Precognition. I didn't really like it in its original form, and so I changed it just a little bit. So it does kind of the same thing, but I do like it a lot more now because it is simplified. So this is still called Precognition. You find a crystal monocle humming with divination magic, allowing you to take 2 reactions per round instead of 1. You have this ability until 24 hours has elapsed, or you use it a number of times equal to your character level. So it's a much simpler version of what it was before. Just the change in application makes me like it more than I did before.
Yeah.
So those two are very similar. Moving into this next page, the Hermit down below, totally identical. Did not change at all. I did add 2 new backgrounds, though, to complete the 4 that were included in the free rules for 2024.
Great.
So I added 3 options for the Criminal and 3 options for the Soldier. So the Criminal, we start out with the Old Pals feature. While exploring a new city, you stumble upon a friend from another life. This creature will offer up a signet ring representing their conclave in exchange for the completion of a small task on their behalf. Once the task is complete, any other creature wearing the signet considers you an ally and will jump in to help you if you are in trouble.
Yeah, that's great.
I have the Alarmist feature. Through your knowledge of simple machines, you find the correct materials to give you a limited spell casting ability. For the next 24 hours, you know the alarm spell, and you can cast it at will.
Cool.
Simple enough. And the Blanket of Night feature. Following an accident or mishap with another creature, you find yourself covered in a dark-colored substance. This could be paint, dirt, ink, soot, etc. For the next 24 hours, or until you are submerged in water, you have advantage on all dexterity stealth checks when you are in dim light.
Cool.
Yeah. Nice
Yeah,
and simple.
I'd still really like... I should let you get to the Soldier, but I just wanted to say I still really enjoy how well these kind of work as
Thank you.
I think, like you said, when you first went over them, like sort of special loot drops for individual characters who take certain backgrounds, and they're not quite magic items because they're usually fairly limited. But you can very easily see it getting looped into a narrative moment and just giving that character a little bit of like a bonus for doing the thing that they designed the character to do. I think that's very cool.
Yeah. And then moving over to the Soldier, we have the Phalanx feature. You come across a small regiment of soldiers that practice similar methods of combat to yours. They will engage you in discussion, and you learn that they're traveling in a different direction than you, but will offer short-term assistance if you need it. For the next 24 hours, whenever you and at least one member of the regiment enters the same combat, you all make initiative rolls with advantage and gain a +1 bonus to your armor class. So the idea here is if you find like-minded soldiers, you can use that to your advantage to universally be more effective. I have the rank and file feature here. You meet an elderly combat veteran who retired at the same rank you hold currently. The veteran gifts you a patch they wore on the battlefield years ago. You gain a +1 bonus to either intimidation or persuasion. And this is kind of like the only one that is permanent. I suppose as long as you hold this patch, I figured a +1 is not so strong that that's okay. And DM discretion can limit how many of these veterans you actually come across.
Right.
But I did like the idea of that being kind of a thing that you're kind of carrying a symbol of somebody else onward into future battles.
Yeah.
And then the coat of arms feature, you find a swatch of fabric that matches your current coat of arms or colors you wore in the past if you no longer do so, briefly sparking the memories from your time under their service. For 24 hours, you gain expertise in either history or religion.
Very cool.
Nice and simple.
They're all very fun, and I think this is the kind of thing that a DM should just could easily just have a little quick note thing of like, okay, who's doing the loot, or like what do we want them to find today, and it happens to be oh, let me tie it to this person's background, give them a little character moment, give them a little bonus. That feels really good, I think it feels good as a player, it feels good as a DM, it feels good for world building and character building. It's great. I love it.
Talk to me about your Pokemon stat blocks, Dan.
Yeah. I, if you will recall, made Eevee and the various evolutions utilizing the rule set for mythic traits, which are the traits that usually trigger upon dropping to 0 hit points to send a monster into a mythic form. In this particular case, your Eevee was sent into the mythic forms of the various evolutions. And I didn't really change any of the evolutions at all. I think, they mostly were very simple monsters, but all very cool, and would function particularly well as sort of beast companions for something like a ranger or otherwise. But one thing I did take from that episode that I thought was really cool was the idea that you brought in of the rotating move set. So you applied this to your Gyarados.
Yep.
Where it had not always the same moves. When encountering the creature, you would sort of decide which of the sort of list of moves was available to that particular version of the creature. And I thought that was very cool. And so I added some traits to the base Eevee to expand on that idea a fair bit. So if you'll remember, the base Eevee is a very small, pretty weak creature. I considered maybe beefing it up a little bit, but I'm just going to leave it be. But the biggest thing I added was this rotating moveset feature. So when an Eevee is first encountered, you determine its features and actions by choosing or rolling 2 or 3 features from the D6 table below. If Eevee's mythic trait is activated, the mythic form retains the chosen traits. So you would have a Vaporeon or a Glaceon with those 2 or 3 additional features as well, right? So they would stay and carry over to the next form. These abilities are Growl, Baby Doll Eyes, Swift, Quick Attack, Copycat, and Bite. All moves that Eevee can learn within the game along its normal track of gaining levels and experience. Baby Doll Eyes is I just renamed the previous Too Cute feature. It just means that anybody who tries to attack Eevee must first make a DC 13 Wisdom saving throw or otherwise be unable to attack. But then we added a couple of things. Every Eevee will always get a claws attack because I didn't want to take away an attack option. But there are additional attack options such as Swift, which you get 3 of per day. Eevee deals 2d4 force damage to a creature within 30 feet of it, and this damage can only be blocked by a shield spell. That's just an auto hit feature.
We love that.
Bite is a melee weapon attack that's a little stronger than its basic claw attack, and prompts a wisdom saving throw, or the target is stunned until the end of its next turn. And if Eevee scores a critical hit, the target has disadvantage on this saving throw. So the thing that Bite does in the game is potentially causes the target to flinch, losing its turn. Growl is a bonus action where EV can target one creature it can see within 30 feet, and that creature must subtract 1d4 from all attack and damage rolls against EV until the end of its next turn, reducing its attack power. It also has Quick Attack as a bonus action. EV can use a bonus action to move up one place in the current initiative order.
Nice.
Just like pop yourself up. Which actually, now that I'm looking at it, I'm like, wait a second, that doesn't make sense because then the person who just went before you could take another turn right after you. So I have to figure out how that works.
I think it could be like you could move that to a reaction maybe, and just say as the last person in a round order goes, you can use your reaction if you haven't already to bump up for the next round.
Yeah, maybe I'll actually switch that.
I like that.
I threw that in there,
that idea,
and I didn't think it all the way through. But yeah, I want to like be able to move up, and yeah, maybe a reaction somewhere is a good idea. It then also has one reaction, and that reaction is Copycat. Eevee can use a reaction to immediately take the same action as another creature within 30 feet of it. It sees you take an action, and it immediately copies that action and uses the same action using its own statistics. And that's it. That's the whole thing.
I like it.
All those features would just transfer down to whatever mythic form comes next. I just really liked that rotating moveset idea. I think is very cool, and I wanted to apply it broadly to this particular creature and see how well it worked. So, there you go.
I think that's great. Yeah, all good changes.
Yeah. How about you? What did you change around to your Pokemon stat blocks?
I changed next to nothing. I didn't even touch the bottom three that I did. I didn't even include them in my document. The only things that I changed here were Magikarp's damage output. I think I had it at a 1d6 plus 1, and I changed it to 1d4 plus 1 for the tackle. And Gyarados, I just took away its legendary action and included that as one of the options for its actions on a recharge of a 5 or 6 for the Dragon Breath feature.
Oh, cool.
And I actually put in to text the stipulation to choose one of the 3 abilities that it has and 4 of the 6 attacks that it can use. So you can choose between Intimidate, Moxie, or Surf for the ability, and you can choose 4 from Aqua Tail, Crunch, Hydro Pump, Rain Dance, Water Pulse, or Dragon Breath for the attacks. Everything else is the same.
I think it's great.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
I liked it as it was.
Yeah. As you should. I think it was great creations, and yeah, I agree. Those last 3 that you made were already very fun little creatures.
Yeah.
So
fun early adventure beasts that could pop up for you.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I will have just about as much to say as you did just now about my Cartomancer because I changed it not at all. I didn't even touch. All I did, I think, was I
copy it.
Went through it for spelling and copy editing mistakes.
Sure.
But I really liked it already. You'll recall, of course, that I made the Cartomancer who uses a tarot deck upon applying sneak attack damage. You could pull a tarot deck or you could pull a card from your tarot deck and apply additional status effects, most of them prompting a saving throw of some kind to do a number of features and things to the target. Yeah, everything else is just the same.
Wonderful.
You still get your Fated Blessing at 9th level. You still get the ability to draw 2 cards and choose one of them whenever you draw at 13th level. And at 17th level, you can, instead of drawing a card, you can just choose to extend the effect that is already active. And that's it. Yeah. Didn't make any changes. Did you make any changes to yours?
I made several changes. The idea is still the same. I pared a lot down to make it more concise and easier to understand. Starting with the 3rd level feature, Fluctuating Bonus. Before this bonus was determined by the color of the cards, And one of the things that you said right away after I pitched this in the original episode was that it would be interesting to have a bonus for each suit. So that's what I did. I expanded this out a little bit, made it a little bit more robust. You gain a bonus based on the card facing up in your discard pile according to the following table. So if it's a heart, you gain a +1 to your armor class, a diamond +1 to your saving throws, a spade +1 to attack rolls, and a club +1 to skill checks. If it is a joker, you can cast a cantrip with your bonus action. So that's universally, cool. If you have a joker up, you can keep it there forever and not pull another card and have access to 4 cantrips. You could cast Blade Ward, Vicious Mockery, and 2 new cantrips that I subbed in for the old ones, Starry Wisp and Elementalism.
Love it.
So that's the joker.
It's very fun.
And then if you don't have any cards, you don't have a bonus.
Yeah, great.
I also changed, what else did I change? 13, I totally eliminated the elevated drawing table.
Oh, cool.
I think the way that I had this written out was very confusing. You draw a second card, and based on the combination of cards that you have, you get a certain level spell. And it was cool, and you got up to a 6th level spell if you drew 2 aces, but it was just very, very complex and needlessly so. And so I changed it to this. Whenever you draw from your imposter deck, you can choose to draw an additional card. So you still draw 2 for a chance to cast a higher level spell. If both cards are the same suit, you can choose to cast a spell listed in the elevated row of the imposter table. So all I did was add a row at the bottom of the same table. So if you draw 2 cards of the same suit and they're both hearts, you can cast Aura of Life. If they're spades, you can cast Storm Sphere. If they're diamonds, you can cast Greater Invisibility. And if they are clubs, you cast Summon Elemental.
That's cool.
An optional rule here, if the second card is a joker, you can pick any of the 4 elevated spells and cast that. So you have your choice.
Cool.
In the original write-up, the joker seemed like more of a bad thing, and I wanted the joker to be kind of like a little bit extra choice. So you can you have a little bit more flexibility if you choose to include the joker.
I think that's very cool.
And then at 17th level, Spark of Certainty, this is basically the same. The only thing I added here was the direction to shuffle your deck afterwards.
Okay, yeah.
But that is all. So it is just a much more concise, I think easier to read and understand version of what I had before.
It's a very cool rogue subclass.
Thank you.
It seems like it would be a lot of fun to play, and maybe I'll get to do it one day. We'll see.
The next 3-in-1 shot. Grab a deck of cards and you can play a randomized rogue. Yeah.
Sounds like a grand time. That's super fun. I really like the original version of it, and I think these changes are very good, like common sense changes just to add clarity and make it really cohesive.
Thank you.
And I think it does that perfectly.
Yeah, you lose out on a couple higher level spells, but the chances of getting a 5th or 6th level spell were so low before anyway that I think you have a higher chance of maybe getting a 4th level spell than you would have getting like Scatter.
Yeah.
Once out of like 500 picks, you're going to get that. Maybe not ever in an entire campaign. So this gives more of an option for a bit of higher level flexibility.
I love that.
Talk to me about your mover monster.
This was another one I didn't really make a lot of changes to, mostly because I didn't necessarily go with the prompt the first time around, and it's such a chaotic and insane monster that I made any changes to try and balance it or like bring it into cohesion was just like, why would I bother? That's not the point of this guy. So you will recall that I made the Anarchist a monster that could break the rules and change the rules and do whatever it wants. It has infinite hit points, and the only way to defeat it is by changing the nature of reality. That's how this thing works, and I love it, and it's great. I considered trying to figure out a way to balance the anarchy aura a little bit. The one that says creatures within 30 feet of the anarchist, you can use an action to declare anything about reality and it becomes true. It's
man.
mostly because I think one thing you said, it like half jokingly in response to me introducing that feature was like, it has 5 hit points now. And I'm like, oh, shoot, wait,
Right.
that means that they can just immediately kill it. That's, there's got to be
You are now
better way to
incapacitated. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting thing. So there's like maybe a single thing about reality is the way to do it, where it's like you could just one thing.
Yeah.
Which the anarchist can ideally also try and combat a little bit here and there, but it's not that important. Because again, this is the kind of creature that you only bring into a table where like there's general understanding of trust and everything at the table. But I did add one thing.
Right.
Because previously it didn't have any action beyond the imposed chaos, which is just rolling on this long table and deciding a random thing. But a lot of these things were just introducing chaos and not necessarily doing anything, not necessarily taking any active action to attack or anything like that. I decided, sure, I'll make a straight up attack. I will make something that just, you can do to deal damage if you don't want to impose chaos this turn, if you want. And this is the Chaos Strike. This is a melee or ranged weapon attack. It has a bonus to hit of +5 plus your strength or dexterity. That goes into the fact that you don't decide its ability scores until the first time you roll them.
Right.
So once you decide them, it's strength or dexterity +5. And it has a range of 120 feet. One target. On a hit, roll 1d4 and 1d6. The d4 determines how many damage dice will be rolled, and the d6 determines the size of the damage die from a d4 on a roll of 1 to d20 on a roll of 6. And the damage type for this attack is chosen each time the anarchist makes this attack. So you just, you roll a d4 and you're like, okay, I'm going to roll 3. Which ones? I'm going to roll 3d10 for this particular attack. And then the next time it might be 1d4. It just moves around.
That's crazy. I like that a lot.
I considered making it a d8 and a d6, but that seemed maybe a little too swingy. But also, who cares?
That would be wild. Yeah. Right. Who cares?
This thing is insane. So it didn't seem right. It didn't seem right to overhaul it or anything like that. So I just left it as is, and
no, it's
God
great.
save anyone who tries to actually use this in their games.
I think it's wonderful.
What'd you do?
My original pitch was the Omni Magnet.
Which I love
it's a
so
big
much.
metal cylinder that can move creatures that are made of or wearing metal around the battlefield. I only changed a few things here. I didn't change the polarity unit at all. That is totally identical. For the actual Omni Magnet itself, I gave it a new feature, an additional feature. I call this Lockdown, and this has to do with what you talked about in our original episode about creatures that get too close. What is the consequence of getting too close to the magnet? If a creature wearing or made of metal enters a space within 10 feet of the Omni Magnet, they're forced to make a DC 17 strength saving throw or become restrained until they leave the area. Another creature can attempt to pull the restrained creature away from the Omni Magnet by making the same saving throw. So if you get too close, you are stuck there.
Okay.
Unless you're very strong.
Love it. I think that makes a ton of sense.
Thank you. I also, for this one, just like Gyarados, I eliminated the legendary action and gave more flexibility with the actions being able to be taken by the magnet. So the focused rend was a legendary action before. That is, the magnet chooses a creature that's wearing or made of metal and moves them up to 20 feet in a straight line within its field. I made that an action, and then I said the magnet can make one polarity unit attack and either one magnetic rend or focused rend.
Great.
So it can take 2 actions in its turn rather than 1 and having 1 legendary action. So that felt like a good change. And then for the manual operation of the magnet, this is a monster, but also if it is infiltrated, 2 medium or smaller size creatures can operate it from the inside. And the only thing I said, I took out the requirement of a check to operate it.
Okay.
I just said it is It is only able to be operated by creatures that have an intelligence score of at least 13 or a proficiency with any vehicle.
Great.
Before it said if you had a proficiency with a vehicle, you had to make a check to do it. I just eliminated that. If you can drive a vehicle, you can figure this out.
Remind me, the creatures controlling the Omni-Magnet, you use your action to use the Omni-Magnet's actions, right?
Yes.
Gotcha. Cool.
Yep. So the propulsion tech takes their action to use 2 attacks, and the magnetic tech takes their action to use either of the rend actions.
Cool.
And then they can swap seats as a bonus action.
I think that's very cool.
Thanks, man. Same basic thing. I think just a few minor logistical fixes to make it a little bit easier and give the Omni-Magnet more of an offensive stance.
Yeah.
I think how I had it before, it was very battlefield control oriented, and it had very little leeway for actually using a damage output type of feature. And now there's more room to give an attack and also move things around the battlefield. So it made it a little bit more dangerous is what I'm saying.
I think that's great.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that, and I can think of so many ways that I want to use that in games.
It's in the foyer of Arcanotech Industries.
It sure is.
It's the first thing you see when you walk in the door.
Making sure no undesirable metals get into the building.
You're staying right there, man. You're not coming any further. And last, we find ourselves at our druidic spells.
Indeed, and I'll be totally honest with you here. I made some changes. I do technically still have 9 spells,
Okay.
but I have moved around some of the level markers here a little bit, and I have removed 1 spell entirely, and I don't have the full run anymore.
Okay.
But I still am thinking about it, so that might change. I got rid of my original 3rd level spell, which was Call of the Wild, which allowed you to do this weird sort of bonus to your wild shape that you could allocate as you see fit, but it wasn't a very good scaling situation, and I feel like with the changes that were made in 2024 to the Druid and wild shape, I didn't feel like it worked quite as well anymore.
Totally fair.
So instead of that, I have split the next level spell. The spell that I had at 4th level was Corrosive Shroud. And I've split that into 2 different spells. And I've put them both at 3rd level. So Corrosive Shroud does the... originally what was just the first paragraph of the original Corrosive Shroud spell, which is an action spell. It's concentration up to 1 minute. This is you shield yourself with a barrier against weapons not of the natural world. Any non-magical weapon made of metal that hits you corrodes. After dealing damage, the weapon takes a permanent and cumulative -1 penalty to damage rolls. If the penalty drops to -5, the weapon is destroyed, and non-magical ammunition made of metal that hits you is also destroyed after dealing damage. This is just you can shield yourself against non-magical metal weapons. Yeah. And because, of wild shape and all of this stuff, you could keep concentration on this while you are in a wild shaped form and just be like an acid bear that every time a metal weapon hits you, it just gets less and less and less effective. And then I separated out the second part of it into its own spell, which is Corrosive Touch, which is a single action instantaneous spell with just somatic components. You touch a piece of non-magical metal that is not adamantine or silver and cause it to corrode. A weapon affected by this spell takes a permanent and cumulative -1 penalty to damage rolls, and a shield or suit of armor takes a permanent and cumulative -1 penalty to the armor bonus it provides. If this penalty drops to -5 or +0 for a shield specifically, the weapon or armor is destroyed. The spell destroys 1 square foot of any other non-magical metal object, and if the target object is being worn or carried, you must make a melee spell attack against the wielder's armor class.
Yeah, that's great.
So you could use this in utility to just push your way through a metal door, for example. It might take some time to get through the full area of it because this is 1 square foot at a time, and you'd be burning, somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 to 5 third level spell slots to actually corrode that much.
Right.
Kind of tough to see that working very frequently. But you can definitely also use this to do all kinds of other stuff. It has combat utility. It's now separated out from the concentration part of the original spell.
Right.
And then we jump up to 4th level with a new spell that I made called Sow and Reap. You conjure a shower of seeds in a 20-foot cube within range. The range is 60 feet. Each creature in the area must succeed on a dexterity saving throw or have the poisoned condition and be covered in barbed seed pods until the end of its next turn, at which point it must make a constitution save. If the target fails the second save, it takes 3d10 necrotic damage and can gain 1 level of exhaustion, and then must repeat the save at the end of each of its subsequent turns. The spell ends on a target if it succeeds a saving throw or if it uses its entire turn doing nothing except brushing off all the seed pods. Just get a nice sizable chunk of an area where you can just throw a bunch of seed pods down and everybody gets coated in poisoning seeds that start to eat away at them and dig their roots underneath into their skin and pull at their life force. That's that guy.
I like it. It feels very druid. Like there aren't a lot of druid spells that feel this sinister. I like the natural world always is kind of represented as this pure and like bountiful healing thing. Mm-hmm. And this is great. This is like along the same lines as Wither and Bloom and Blight, where it is the deeper, more sinister side of nature. And I like that. There's not enough of that in the game.
Well, and no spoilers, but we have a prompt in our list that is specifically like,
I know,
druids that are focused on kind of the weird and wild parts of nature, like parasites. And that's like a little bit the inspiration for this guy, where it's like something vaguely parasitic going on here. The 5th level spell, Cultivate, which boosted your next short rest. The only change that I made here, I believe, I removed one of the features that it granted on the next short rest because it was sort of like too many things to track.
Sure.
It was like after that short rest, you get bonuses to checks, but it's like, okay, but that's not after the first cast, and that's after the effect happens on the short, so it's too much. And then I also added the stipulation that this spell needs to be cast when you finish a long rest. So the idea is you just first thing in the morning. So you can't do it right before you go to bed and it stays for the next 24 hours. You cast this when you finish a long rest, and then you get your first short rest benefits.
That's good. I think that closes up a lot of the loopholes that could be exploited here.
That's pretty much what I saw there.
Good change. A good change.
And then I made a new spell for 6th level as well. It's called Greater Wild Shape, and this is truly an exact response to the fact that the Moon Druid now has removed the option to wild shape into other things and has instead focused into more lunar magic stuff.
Lunar territory,
So this is a spell, 6th level, for druids. With concentration up to the duration of your wild shape feature. When you cast this spell, to access more powerful forms, you may turn into an elemental, a plant, or an ooze. Normal restrictions for challenge ratings still apply, and if you lose concentration while in this form, you immediately shapeshift back into your original form.
Yeah, that's great.
And then I removed Wind Spirit entirely, the 8th level spell that I made, because it wasn't good, and I didn't want to like downgrade it to a different level because I just think it wasn't very good to begin with, so we're not doing it. But we're jumping all the way up to 9th, and Floating Island is identical except for adding a cost, but my changes didn't save here, probably because I made that change a long time ago. I added a cost to this, and now I'm trying to remember what it was, but it's something in the neighborhood of like 1,000 gold. Like, it's not a cheap spell to cast.
Right. Right.
So you can't just do a million of them.
I like it.
How did your druid spells come out?
A few of mine stayed exactly the same. I replaced my level 1 spell that used to be Command Plants. Command a plant to uproot itself and kind of attack on your behalf. I thought that was fine, a little bit boring. I changed it to a spell called Root Trap. You secure a thick 10-foot root or vine to the ground in a straight line. Any creature that moves over the vine's position must make a DC 12 Dex save or fall prone. Once the vine has tripped 3 creatures, it is destroyed.
Nice.
Nice and easy. Nice and easy. A bunch of utility. Great for spreading that across doorways. My 2nd level and 3rd level spells are switched. I had Primal Harvest at 2nd level and Eyes of the Wood at 3rd level, and those have been swapped now. So Eyes of the Wood is now at 2nd level. It is the same.
Yeah.
It's all the same. At 3rd level, Primal Harvest was changed.
Okay.
So in this case, I had this as choosing a druid spell of 1st or 2nd level with a range other than touch or self. So this is just putting out, like magic going outwards is what it was. You can cast it as part of the casting time of this spell. You expend both spell slots, and you can cause that spell to go off after the duration expires, or you cause it as a bonus action. Very similar to your spell seed. Now, I have changed that completely. It's almost 180 degrees in the opposite direction. Same idea, though. So you choose a druid spell of 5th level or lower with a range of touch. So it has to be a touch spell. And a casting time of 1 action. You imbue that spell into a seed as part of the casting of Primal Harvest and expend spell slots for both. The seed is buried in the ground at your location. It uproots and takes effect on the first creature to walk over its space. So this now, I think it is less of an offensive spell. It doesn't make sense to just plant a spell and hope that somebody is going to walk over it. This is mostly a support and buff spell, right? So you mark a location with a stick or something.
Yeah.
And within combat, everybody in your party knows if you need a really quick heal, your Cure Wounds is buried over in this spot here. Just run back there and grab it really quickly at no action expenditure to you or the spellcaster.
Yeah, I mean, you could use this as a trap, but it'd have to be like pretty.
It'd have to be really well placed and lucky.
Pretty specific. Yeah. You would want to put it like in a very clear, like, choke point,
right?
That is going to be something. And like, I think that could be cool. Like, you could use something, maybe something that could restrain or stop someone where they are in that space to really block off an area. But I think this particular version of it really opens it up to multiple different uses, both buff and debuff and attack. And a creative player with something like this in their tool set could do something really fun with it, I think.
Like we were talking about last week, just kind of leaving the door ajar a bit for players to experiment with what a feature can do. That's now what the spell can be.
Love it.
Thanks. Chrysalis stayed exactly the same. It's over the course of 5 rounds of combat, you can render yourself inert, essentially. And the longer you go, the bigger your bonus is at the end once you break out of your cocoon. Nourishing Seeds, also the exact same. Sequoia is completely identical. I did not change a single thing for that one at 6th level. Plant Proxy is identical at 7th level. Transdifferentiation is identical at 9th level. The only thing I changed in One with the Land is that you can be damaged while you are doing this.
Oh.
So this is an 8th level divination spell. I just think it's so strong. You can do so many things. You can affect weather patterns. You can communicate telepathically with creatures within your mile-long range. It has a cost associated with it, but still you can do so many things. And in my first iteration, the first stipulation said that you can't be damaged or detected through magical or non-magical means. And this one, I just paired it back to you can't be detected. So it's really difficult to find you, but if somebody does happen upon you, you can still take damage.
Interesting.
So this kind of changes the strategy, that if you really want to hole up and get a lay of the land for this up to 6 hour spell, the rest of your party also has to be on watch for you. Like, this is a party-wide decision to do this. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the top 4 spells are basically the same. I liked how they were all set up before. So it's just those 2 that were switched, and then the level 1 feature was swapped out completely.
I think that's great.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of these. I think the changes are very good. I still think about how crazy it is for a DM to have to tell you all of the locations, creature types, and alignments of every single creature within a mile of your location.
Coming directly after the episode where we're trying to make divination easier for DMs. No.
My goodness.
Total opposite direction here.
Like,
this is the worst thing.
Every single creature.
Your worst nightmare.
Horrible.
Your worst nightmare, GM.
Horrible. Yeah, really, really rough. Really rough. Yeah, also, the idea that, like, you can't be detected, right? So, through magical or non-magical means, so someone would have to be, like, very obviously made aware of your presence somehow. Mm-hmm. Although I'm not entirely certain how that would happen.
They would literally have to stumble upon your location on accident.
Yeah.
And as a DM, I don't know exactly how I would facilitate that. Like, to make it fair for the player, right? Because obviously the DM, you have control over the world, right. So you can say, oh yeah, this fox found you.
Yeah.
And the big bad was using beast sense on this fox, so now everybody knows where you are. It would have to be a pretty sizable rollable table, like a percentile die, that if I'm going to roll once an hour, and if I get under or over like 90, I'm going to find you.
That's a table thing, but
yeah.
I think the other interesting thing is that idea of taking 1 minute to form back into your own body. Means that, like, if your party is standing watch while you're doing this and something bad does happen, like, you can't get out of this for 1 minute.
Right.
You can use some of the things within the spell to try and help a little bit. You know, you can communicate telepathically with any creature within range, so you can maybe, like, try and intimidate or, like, something, but and you can control weather patterns and storm systems and winds.
If you end up being, as the caster of this, if you end up being a thing that your party has to protect, if you are good to the beasts in the area, that's the easiest combat win imaginable. A mile radius worth of creatures coming to the rescue and aiding your party.
A bunch of carnivorous birds and wolves and
yeah. At that point, don't change back. Like, definitely don't change back. Use the things at your disposal. Yeah. Call all the beasts. Yeah. Have lightning strike down on these storm of vengeance, these enemies here right now.
That actually would be really, really dope. Honestly, that might be the plan. That might be the plan for certain druids in certain parties, is just like, okay, I'm going to take 1 minute, I'm going to jump into this tree, and then I'll do what I can to help you out. I'm going to send some beasts your way, I'm going to send a storm over to the bad guys, and I'm going to be in your heads making sure you know what I'm seeing through all of the beasts' eyes.
I hadn't thought about that being a use of it, but that is great, actually. For this to be a decidedly offensive decision.
What an interesting session that would be, too, to have, like, the druid of the party not actually be on the battlefield with the party as they're fighting, but to be aware of everything that's happening because of this spell.
Okay, so tying back a couple episodes back, we did our partner subclasses. Seventh Mastery was live while we were recording that. And there was a question from somebody in his audience that asked what happens if one of the partners dies, right? This is the handler spell, right? This is your eyes in the sky, not on the battlefield partner.
Yeah.
You have the party fighting, and then the druid just like telling you which way to navigate, because they can be in the eyes of every beast. They can go out and scout for you. They know exactly which paths to take.
I think that would be a lot of fun. That would be very cool.
Wow. I love that so much.
Oh, yeah.
This
has got me thinking about too many things, unfortunately. We don't have time to get into them.
No, we don't.
It's a very cool spell. It's a very cool concept that not a lot of things have in the game, and I think it has a lot of utility in many, many ways. And that's just super cool. Love it. Well, those are our edits, small or large as they may be, to the 11 through 15 creations. And next time we'll be hitting up creations 16, 17, 18, and 19. Those particular creations are items that granted a benefit and penalty. Our tax collector creations, which I'm very excited for. The class-specific ammunition, which I know I have things to change here for sure, because I didn't love this one all that much, so I'm gonna have to make some major changes to that one. And then our lightning and thunder focused monk. Michael, let's wrap it up. What do you have to say to the people before we say goodbye?
This is our 42nd episode, which it feels very, very strange. We are rapidly approaching a year of doing this together. And it's been a minute since we've just outright thanked people for listening. Thanks. Really simple. Thanks for being here. Thanks for submitting prompts for us. Thanks for engaging in discourse. Thanks for rating and reviewing the podcast on your chosen platform of listening. We really appreciate all of that. That helps us out a whole ton. And we would not still be doing this at the caliber we are doing it, I think, if it wasn't for the amount of engagement that we've had. So we really appreciate it. And we hope to keep doing this for a long time.
Absolutely. Definitely. Thank you so much for just hanging out. Thank you for playing the game that we all love so much.
Yeah.
Well, Michael, I would be excited to hear about those creations that you're making changes to next time.
Mm-hmm.
Until then, listeners, we'll catch you later. Goodbye.
Goodbye.